Good morning. My name is Yogi Schulz. I'm a senior consultant with Corvell Consulting. This morning, my presentation is about demystifying digital transformation in the oil and gas industry. I'm going to explain the concepts of digital transformation and how to benefit from them, and what technologies are involved, and what issues you will encounter and how to resolve those.
Okay, so agenda today is, first of all, we're going to have Yogi Schulz come in and talk to us about demystifying digital transformation, which is really kind of the what conversation. And followed by that, we're going to have Mike Henry from ARC Resources, who's going to talk to us about success with data analytics, which is really the how ARC has gone through this, through a pandemic and other things. After that, we'll just a couple minutes for closing remarks. So really, what is today about? Today is really about, to understand again digital transformation and the importance of it. I think this topic was kind of delayed by the pandemic, but really a little bit of a reset on what digital transformation and the importance of it. And to share experiences, because the journey is difficult. For anybody that's tried digital transformation, I don't think anybody's implemented it 100%. I think there's been lots of fits and starts, and I think a lot of people are various paths, or various part of the path in their journey towards digital transformation. And this is also to build a community and to share our experience and the ideas on your digital journey. So now from a Cadeon standpoint, Cadeon understands, and how we can help, and we have proven strategies along with case studies. And one of the things that we'd be very interested to talk to you about is we have a risk-free offer. It's called the Cadeon 10K Challenge, to demonstrate how digital transformation can impact your organization, and it even comes with a money-back guarantee. So our first speaker of the morning is Yogi Schulz. I've known Yogi for many, many years, and Yogi's presented in many different arenas. I would like to thank Yogi for taking the time this morning to come and talk with us and frame out this very important topic of demystifying digital transformation. So with that, I'd like to welcome Yogi to the stage.
Thank you, Phil, for the invitation. Good to see you, and I certainly agree with him. It's great to be back in person. So welcome today. So I want to echo what Phil said. If you want to ask a question, contribute something, just kind of wave your hand, and I'll be happy to cue you. Just ask you not to throw anything to get my attention, okay? So if we can have that as a ground rule, I think that would be good. So let me get to the starting slide. There it is. Demystifying digital transformation. As Phil said, I want to give you an overview and some concepts around digital transformation. And to me, this is a success if I've sparked some kind of a thought about something that you could do if you get back to your office that will help the organization and make you look good and maybe even get you a bonus, Hopefully I've provided enough breadth that it'll spark something like that. So thank you to Phil and Cadeon for inviting me, and happy to be here to share some ideas with you today. I don't know if you are aware, but digital transformation is associated with a lot of hype these days. And I'm sure you've seen quite a few references in the literature about how it can be applied to the oil and gas industry. Sometimes it's associated with advanced or even emerging technologies, so that can be an interesting idea or a huge risk. So I want to provide an overview of what digital transformation is and what it isn't. So who am I? As you heard Phil mention, I'm the founder of Corvell Consulting. We're an IT management consulting organization in the oil and gas industry. We've worked with lots of oil companies, all the ones that large and small. We've been there somewhere, somehow, on some kind of a project to make some improvements to their portfolio of systems. I write a column in IT World Canada. Some of you may have seen that from time to time. I used to be on CBC Radio as an IT guy, and that was different, a lot different from being in the oil and gas industry.
Rex Murphy.
Yeah, and I'm envious of Peter, of Rex Murphy's audience. I love some of the provocative and interesting things that he says, and I enjoy reading it all. So hopefully I'm just as popular as he is, only in the IT community. I wish that were true. And from the show of hands, it was clear that you've seen me present in the past in many varied venues. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about the outline. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Oh yeah, I skipped ahead. You gotta have a, so, since it's our top priority, what do we mean by digital transformation? Zoom meetings, using Slack, digital first, data-driven, customer-centric, don't forget agile, something about the cloud, making TikTok videos. Maybe we should start by what it doesn't mean. So I love this cartoon because exactly what it's talking about here is that digital transformation has such a wide range of definitions. No wonder some people are confused. And some people have appropriated the topic for work that really has very little to do with digital transformation, simply because the phrase sounds neat. So I'm hoping that I can provide a little bit of clarity today, clear up some of the confusion, and that we can approach digital transformation in a less confusing and more helpful way. So here's an outline. Don't be intimidated by this, because I'll just hit each of these topics just very briefly. We'll start with some trends that are enabling digital transformation. We'll talk about some common business issues that you'll recognize where digital transformation can actually help. We'll talk a little bit about a definition and goals, and we'll spend more time on opportunities. Where are they within the upstream oil and gas business? We'll talk about the benefits, and we'll speculate a little bit about the future. Where is the technology going, and what might it enable us to do that perhaps we can't do today? And that's particularly important, that you don't get sucked into doing a project today for something that isn't feasible until the future, okay? That just sets everybody up for failure. And we'll talk about some of the common obstacles, and the goal there is to have you recognize these obstacles so you can take some action and not have them become a problem in your particular project. So my goal is to help us increase our understanding of digital transformation and trigger some thinking about where it can help in your company and produce some benefits. Now, if we look at this chart from a Deloitte study about digital transformation, oil and gas is at the top. Here's the version for those of us who couldn't see the other version. Here's the zoom-in version. Being at the top on this chart is bad. And what it suggests is that oil and gas has comparatively low digital maturity. And maybe you disagree with that, maybe you agree with that, doesn't matter. But the point is, there's lots of opportunity where digital transformation can help the business. And I hope that's one of the reasons why we're here today, to think about that some more. Okay, so what are some of the trends that we want to talk about? Well, there's affordable information technology. As you know, the price of computing resources has plummeted, and even the price of application software maybe hasn't plummeted, but if it stayed level, the functionality at that price point has gone way up. So that enables some of this. And then we have big data and data analytics. That's the technology for managing really, really large volumes of data. And data analytics is about the software that helps you meaningfully manage and understand what's in that huge volume of data. Because you're not going to see anything interesting in that volume of data trying to scroll through it or present it on a spreadsheet. That's impossible. And then in the oil and gas industry, we have a lot of SCADA and IIoT data. Now, I know there are those who think IIoT is a really big thing, and maybe in some industries it is, but in oil and gas, it's just a new label for SCADA data. And I'm sure the IIoT people would be very unhappy with me to say it that way. Be that as it may. And then we have this, the digital generation. The people who are coming out of university, who are starting their careers in oil and gas, they have a different mindset. All of the digital technologies have been part of their life since they were teenagers or even earlier. And they just expect that your organization will have that. So they can be a champions and leaders in the digital transformation of your organization. So let's talk about some common business issues. Sorry, the animation is not working as advertised today. I don't know why that is, but we're not going to have a technical debug in the middle of the presentation. I'll just blame it on Phil. Okay, the point is that we rely heavily on paper-based manual processes, even though most of our organizations are using a lot of information technology, right? For example, mineral rights, surface land leases, regulatory approvals, regional assessments of exploration potential, performance reports for management. It's amazing how many of those that I just listed are still partially or fully manual and not digital. And then there's not enough integration among the IT systems. Financial systems don't receive data from PA systems. Field operations doesn't see financial data. And I'm sure you could add to that list easily. And we struggle with partner and employee collaboration. When they're trying to access the same data on the same project at the same time. And we struggle when we're working with partners, for example, engineering companies or other kinds of service companies. We have a lack of electronic connectivity. We operate with poor data quality from time to time, and we work with haphazard data management practices. And we defer modernizing our IT systems. Now, the way that happens, and you may have encountered this, we put it on the list of things to do in next year's budget, and somehow it gets scratched during the budgeting process because there are other items that we just see as more important. So you may say, well, wait a minute. If everybody's encountering all of this, how come we're still successful as oil and gas producers? Well, we are successful, and I'm not trying to mitigate that in any way. But let me suggest that there's increased pressure for cost reductions, right? Operating cost reduction. There's pressure from the capital markets for higher returns, right? So all of that means that an oil and gas producer simply has to do better and has to attack some of these issues. And the solution to many of these issues is improved digital transformation. So I don't know how many of you are struggling with these business issues. I don't need you to put up your hands, so don't want to embarrass anybody. But I'd like to think there's something on that list that is occurring in your organization that could be done a little better. Okay, so let's just give you one very detailed example of where digital transformation could actually help. Typical invoice processing, everybody does that all day, every day, right? So where does it start? Typically, somebody looks at a system a few times a day looking for new invoices, and then the step is to confirm the vendor number is accurate, right, on that invoice, and it's active vendor. Second step is to confirm that the provided well identifier on the invoice is in fact a valid well identifier and exists in the company's well data. And then we confirm that the work description is reasonably complete and plausible for the well that's involved. Okay, and then when we confirm that everything is fine in the financial system, we then update the invoice status and ready it for payment, and then we actually issue the payment through some kind of EFT data. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar. I just wanted to drill into this detail. But what happens if something is missing, right? All of a sudden, if it's missing or unavailable, it doesn't work. You have a big manual workaround. Things get delayed. There's a lot of additional effort. So these digital processes are very important for the reasonably efficient operation. And I just give you this one example. A given oil company will have hundreds or even thousands of these processes if you think about it. So what gets in the way? Sometimes it's an incomplete invoice, sometimes it's missing vendor data, sometimes it's unlikely well data or an inactive facility, incorrect coding, no banking info. So even in this one small example, there's a litany of issues that could go wrong that could slow down the process, dramatically increase the process, reduce data quality. So digital transformation provides an opportunity to make this process more reliable, more consistent, or better if it's not working well at all in your organization. So let's talk about some definitions. So we'll use the format of good, bad, and ugly. So first is, good is transforming business processes and practices to help organizations compete effectively in an increasingly digital world. So here, we do apply or leverage digital technologies in support of improving business processes. Bad is applying technology to conduct business in new and different ways, implementing technology for its own sake, not grounded in some business case. So do consider alternative ways of conducting the business for reduced cost or competitive advantage. That's good, but don't let it be driven by the technology. Do it the other way around, driven by the business need. And ugly is implementing and operating cutting-edge technologies that may or may not be ready for prime time, just because they're cool or interesting or fascinating. Let's make sure you understand the potential and you have enough maturity or robustness to make that work. So I'll leave it to you to see where your organization fits on this scale and how you move to the top line. Okay, so what are the goals of digital transformation, really? We want to respond to business issues and pressures. If we want to respond to those ones that I've described, we better leverage this technology to make smarter data-driven decisions. And the data, you've heard that phrase before, I'm sure, but why is it important? What we're trying to get away from is relying exclusively on experience. Not that experience isn't important, it's just don't rely just on experience. And worse, don't rely on hip shooting. Somebody's just guessing based on their experience and they're making an off-the-cuff recommendation. That's very dangerous. It tends to increase the risks. We want to leverage the assets and the capabilities of our organization more effectively or more efficiently for growth. Many of us have assets, frankly, that are not being used to their potential. In some organizations, we want to stem market share or margin erosion. Margin erosion really is around cost control. Market share tends not to be a big issue in oil and gas industry, but it is a big issue elsewhere. Maybe you can think of it in terms of increasing your production or increasing your net reserves. And we do want to exploit new information technology. I don't want this to sound like an anti-technology presentation because the technology is important. I just want to talk about where its legitimate role is. I mean, we've all talked about the cloud. We've all talked about open source, software as a service. Well, these are legitimate technology developments that can help any organization. There's also been a lot of hardware that can help us. I mentioned here augmented reality headsets, drones, industrial Internet of Things, tablets, smartphones. These are all technologies that can help organizations in their digital transformation journey. Okay, so some of you may have here encountered this. Here's a set of about 100,000 data sources full of bits of well data. Please consolidate and integrate them into one meaningful data warehouse. Any of you been near a project like that? Right, I have. Okay, so while this is a request for a digital transformation project, be careful about taking on ridiculous projects or making commitments that are difficult or even impossible to fulfill. That really is not a career-enhancing move. So be very cautious. Sometimes we are overly ambitious. Often managers have no idea how difficult data integration is. They're not trying to set us up as IT professionals for failure, but they just don't know. Data integration work, in my experience, is always, no exceptions, preceded by a lot of data cleanup work. So somehow budget that into your project. Project managers are often bludgeoned into committing to budgets and schedules before anybody has any credible idea of how big or complicated the current project proposal really is. So hopefully that hasn't happened in your life. So how do you deal with that bludgeoning? You can't just say no. Nobody wants to hear no, right? My strategy that I recommend to you is say, well, boss, why don't we do a proof of concept to explore this goal that you have so that we can better understand what the scope and the risks are and what the eventual cost might be. Well, anybody can pull off a pilot. You're going to spend less than $100,000 and get a sense of what you're facing. So that way you can say yes, but you can say yes in a measured way that sets you and your team up for success, not failure. And obviously in this situation, try to start with the smallest, cleanest data set that you have and make some modest progress. So looking at some tactical digital transformation opportunities, these all tend to involve Excel. So wherever you see Excel in your organization, there's usually an opportunity there. So the first opportunity is, where are you closing gaps between systems with Excel? Which software packages are you not using that might be valuable to use at that spot instead of Excel? Field production operations is often an area where there's a mountain of Excel that's overused, also financial reporting. The second opportunity is which software packages are not well integrated as they could be. Where do you have opportunities for integration that you're not leveraging? This is a list of the data entities that most oil and gas organizations have to deal with in some way, shape, or form. And where you can reuse that data in multiple systems, you're going to get more data quality, data consistency, better data integration. Third opportunity is, what software packages are you licensing that you're not using widely or fully? So there's two opportunities there. One is to get rid of it, okay, and the other is, which will simplify your application portfolio, and the other is to use it more fully because you're paying for it, and then integrate it reasonably. So, any of you overuse Excel in your organizations? You see, not yours, right? No. I don't think Microsoft will ever invite me to an Excel conference. So, I think Excel is a brilliant, wonderful tool, and so this is not an anti-Excel presentation. What this is an anti-overuse or misuse of Excel point. And I see a lot of that happening in organizations. So is there an example where you've been able to improve integration, reduce the use of Excel that you could share with us? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, everybody has it.
Yeah.
So
It's ubiquitous.
not everybody has access to all the other systems that you're talking about. So then there's that barrier of where can I get the data? And your boss says, hey, I need this data, and then you build the data for your boss, and Bob's your uncle.
Right. So it's that universal availability, the plasticity or the flexibility of Excel is hugely attractive. And everybody and his dog thinks that they can build a system in Excel. And there's a bunch of features in Excel that give you the impression that's true. But have you ever tried to debug a reasonably complex Excel spreadsheet? Like, that's impossible. Right? I know you guys are really bright and brilliant, but I don't know how to do that. So that's one of the limitations. Okay.
I think the one thing with Excel is that, like Power BI, Spotfire, where you start getting into large data, databases, data land, to bring that all together, Excel does have limitations. I think that's where, as you said, people, when you start small with something, and to scale it up and to say, okay, if you want to do this for the full organization, that's where you look into that next level and say, okay, well, we need a tool that's going to allow all these data lakes to come together and give us the information we need. So,
thank you. So bringing the data together, that seemingly innocuous phrase that Clay just used, that's not so easy. And doing joins in Excel does not work well with tiny, tiny amounts of data, maybe it does work. But if you want to go for digital transformation and you want to go for data-driven organization, you'll soon find that it takes multiple joins, not just one, multiple joins, to really get there from here. Because you always need to bring multiple types of data together to support data-driven decision-making. And Excel does not do that well. So thank you for pointing that out, Clay. All right, opportunities. Eradicate the remaining paper. That's always an opportunity. Integrate systems. Support employee and partner collaboration for process improvement. Implement electronic connectivity with your partners. You'll see a number of references in this presentation for working between people inside your organization and people outside your organization. I know that's not easy, and it runs into a lot of hurdles around security and access and cybersecurity, but there are huge opportunities to make that better, so figure out ways to do that. Maybe the cloud is a strategy for doing that. Maybe some externally hosted applications or websites are ways to do that. Okay, boost the data quality, boost data management practice, modernize some aging systems. But let's talk about benefits. Reducing operating costs, I think, is something that we're eternally interested in doing, right? So digital transformation can contribute to that. And convert your data to actionable intelligence. Now, you've heard people, that's a phrase a lot of people throw out, maybe trite, but a certain amount of integration and then excellent data visualization tools like TIBCO or Power BI or Tableau or whatever you like can make that a reality. And it's not just a trite phrase anymore. We're all talking about innovation. Well, maybe in the data there are some insights that really lead to innovation, and digital transformation can be the enabling technology to turn that innovation fantasy into innovation reality. Okay. So this is a great oil and gas example. What you're seeing here is a chart that shows each line is all the wells for a given operator. Okay. And how they're productive, and it's their times as if they all started producing on the same date. Okay? So you can see there's a dramatic difference between the best and the worst operator in terms of initial production from a fracked well. And the difference actually is 4 times. So if the bottom one is X, the top one is 4X. And after 4 years, the difference is still 2X. So what is it that the best operator is doing or not doing? And the reverse, what is the worst performing operator doing or not doing that causes them to be worse? Now it turns out that in a typical fracked horizontal wells, there are so many variables running around. Doesn't matter how brilliant the engineers you have are working on that, they can't keep that straight, or the interactions. And that's where data analytics, modeling, digital transformation come into place to help you move up in terms of the performance of your wells. So this is not made up data. You could run this query against your choice, IHS or geologic, and you could see this, and it provides a huge opportunity to improve your return on investment in drilling and completion. And you're not going to get there from here without a hefty dose of digital transformation. Okay. Henry, it's for you. Apparently your heart is about to stop. Okay, so this is predictive analytics, isn't it? We all want to predict the future. In upstream oil and gas, predictive maintenance, for example, can reduce unplanned outages, and it remains a huge opportunity. Yes, sir?
I would like to ask you, I I get where you're coming from on all this. Who would you put up there as the prize winner of this digital transformation that you would hold out as an example?
Are you talking about a company or an application?
That rocks it.
Well, okay, so I don't think there's an answer to that. What I perceive in many oil and gas companies, there are glimmers of examples. And in every oil company, the glimmer is a little different. And in every oil company, there are multiple opportunities that nobody is chasing. Now, you may say, well, that's a politically correct answer, but I'm sorry if you think that way, but I think I'm accurately describing it. You want to jump in there? You're nodding your head, Mark, or you
Oil and gas is probably one of the most complex industries out there. We have hundreds of different data sets, maybe 1,000 different data sets. I don't think anybody's doing anything.
Okay, thank you. So, did we dodge your question, Peter, or did we help?
Yes, you dodged it.
I just like to point out that the maturity or age of a company when they choose to embrace it, it's much easier in a startup than it is in something that's got 20 years of history.
Thank you. What happens in a startup, they don't have any legacy data or legacy systems. Okay, so that makes it dramatically easier. But the problem with a startup is they also have no data maturity at all. Okay, the 4 or 5.
Sorry, Yogi. I just said they use Excel.
Yeah. Okay, so there's maybe 4 or 5 guys and gals who, with this startup oil and gas company, in effect, they've got 4 or 5 departments. And what are they all using? Excel plus AccuMap or GeoScout. Right? That's where they start.
I'm curious to hear Mike's story from your side, because in my former company, we brought in Spotfire and the Power BI, and I would have conversations with the engineers and the geologists on, is this helping you drive your business? And to a T, they're like, this is incredible. We're doing things with Power BI, with Spotfire, that we never could see before. And again, I know, complexities, all the different, that you talked about, some of the different systems. To bring that all together into a dashboard and say, well, we can tell when a well's offline or they're doing a workover or whatever. To see that live, through data analytics, it's incredible. And the value from the engineers, they said, this is saving us millions of dollars a year. And it's pretty simple. Again, that's an older company that's been around for a long time. So I want to hear what Mike has to say. I know it didn't come easy, but.
Okay. So, okay. So I agree with Clay, but notice he had to show them. Okay? If I just draw something on the whiteboard or wave my arms, we really ought to do this, that's a dud. So Clay took some initiative, started a little project to create a little bit of a prototype, and then got the engineer's face in front of it, and then they went, wow. And then they were willing to sign an AFE or a project quota or whatever to build that out into something that's sustainable. Right? So that's the sales tactic end of this.
The other part I was going to say is, I always thought, we've been through $20 oil prices. When oil's sitting at $20, if you find a way to save a company $500,000, they're all over it. The big thing in the energy sector right now is, oil went over $130 again. Everyone's just started spending money. They really don't care if you're finding better ways to run your business. So we're at that kind of $80 to $100 range right now. So people are pretty comfortable with what they're doing. They're not looking into, again, how do we reduce costs? It's there, but they're less likely to spend the time and the focus saying, okay, we need to get into the digital transformation now while we have money to do it. Because when oil hits $20 again, if it ever does, we want to be ready for that. So economics do come into play with what people invest in, whether it's shiny objects or can we make our business run more efficiently. So,
Natural gas is 44 cents yesterday.
Okay. Okay, now, let me just respond to Clay while Vanna brings up the microphone to you there, Ashley. Okay, so at the high price of oil, you're right, it's hard to get people's attention on these concepts of saving money. So I think we need to tilt, because the issue at high prices tends to be supply chain. How can I get this well drilled? I'm struggling with components, I'm struggling with service vendors. Try to help in that space. Ashley?
I have a question, and I don't mean it to be incendiary, but
Sure.
it is a very complex business. You're right. It's among the most complex businesses, but it's not beyond comprehension. But so I've sold maybe $50 million of technology to the energy industry, and I've worked across a bunch of industries, Yogi. I work for a guy whose operations analytics software is being used by over 100 producers, and he used to call IT, he would always say IT stands for internal terrorist. And this is the peculiarity about the energy business. If you want to sell, first of all, the energy business is one of the hardest businesses, I believe, to actually sell anything innovative to. I think anyone who's sold to energy would recognize that. There's never a good time. It's either we're too busy making money, come back when it's slower, or we're crying in our beer, Jesus, come back when we're busy. But there's a problem with IT leadership in the energy business. And it's the avatar of businesses where if you want to sell innovation, you must avoid IT initially. You avoid it. Why is that? Why does it have that peculiarity?
Okay,
Is my question.
all right. So that's a great question. I think the IT department is in a very schizophrenic position. Okay. On one hand, they're being asked to make sure that all the systems run well, there's no ransomware issues, that we have robust systems, so we engage in formal processes for testing and all of these other things. So we're asking the IT department to be very formal and very risk adverse and work within their budget. And in fact, we are horrified one day a year about how much money we're spending on IT during our budget time. The other 364 days of the year, we want more IT. And the IT department is now hamstrung by whatever budget they got on that one day of the year when the budgeting process gave them a straitjacket. Okay, so we have this schizophrenic situation in larger organizations. What it does, it causes the formation of shadow IT, where there are little pockets of IT running around all over the organization. So what you've done here, Ashley, is you've totally hijacked my presentation here this morning, because this is really a huge and important topic, but it's for another day. And at the risk of throwing in a commercial, you can watch my video called Bridging the Chasm, Data Scientists versus IT, which gets into these issues and how to perhaps attack them. Because what you're describing is exactly what goes on. So if I were to grill Phil or Scott or Mark Perry and ask them, who do you actually sell to? They would agree with you. I'm selling to everybody but the IT department. So I'm not.
But aren't they?
I'm sorry?
But aren't they?
Are they?
They are. I don't need Spotfire. I don't. I'm 19. I don't need it. So why would you sell to me? I'm not sure that the argument is that you have to sell to IT. I think you have to sell to the business, and the business's job is to make sure IT understands how to manage.
Okay, so the reason.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great,
Yeah.
Mike. The reason you end up selling to IT or IT gets involved because in many organizations, IT has to sign off on whatever it is you're doing, particularly if you're bringing in a new piece of software into the organization. So I think for many organizations, the whole concept of software as a service, where you as a marketer can implement something in a business unit without ever having to talk to IT, is a huge thing. Now, maybe I'm tarring you with something that is wrong, and maybe you guys are more agile and less bureaucratic. But I've observed in bigger oil companies, you guys are now a big oil company, what Ashley is talking about.
You gotta move to the X.
Stay on the X, Yogi.
All right. Ashley got me kind of excited. I got out of my box there.
No, but this is great conversation. And to answer the question, we sell to everybody. We don't just sell to business. We sell. IT is just about involved in every conversation, every sales call we make. No question, right? But it's the business that seems to have the need, and IT is. I feel bad for people in IT because we get. You have the constrained budget, but you have to manage all this demand. Like, how do you do it, right? Like, at the end of the day, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough people, right? And I don't necessarily have the skill set to do all these digital transformation things. So what do? Right? It's not a win-win situation.
Yeah, so to deal with that demand issue, you get shadow IT, and you get concepts like the citizen data scientist. Well, I thought it's the most ridiculous phrase that I've ever heard. Now, we can spend a half an hour debating on why you agree or disagree with me as Vanna is looking at her watch. And Mike is probably wondering, when will this guy stop,
Yogi, I just want to ask a question, though, because somebody made a comment, I think it was Clay. Budgets, all right? So spending. So yes, we are at $80+ oil. For those of you working in oil and gas, our budget's bigger. Is spending back? Because I'm curious to get your thoughts, because I don't see it. No. I don't see it at all. I see constraint, right?
I think the biggest problem is we're seen as an expense to the organization, not as a partner. Yeah. So our budgets are, you're $90 million, you're $90 million every year from now on.
So it doesn't matter if oil's at $100 a barrel, it's still 90.
Correct.
It's cautionary due to inflation. Inflation is a huge part of it right now.
Just inflation?
Yep.
I think that the challenge here is that politics, the extra burden that the energy industry is getting put on with shifting regulations, a bunch of the other things that are showing up in the boardroom that are clouding the expense that they might want to put into IT. It's just a big challenge in the industry. So when the money's good, let's produce oil as much as we can. Let's get it done. And I would argue, or not argue, but point out the fact that chart that you showed with the high-performing wells versus the low-performing wells is probably highly associated with an effective field team that know how to work that field extremely well and understand how to coordinate, and they have shadow IT. Would you agree?
Could well be the case, absolutely.
Okay, anyway, Yogi, you have 10 minutes.
Right. This has been a great conversation, and maybe what we're doing here is giving Phil some ideas on what he should do for his next event. So thank you, Ashley, for bringing this up. It's an important issue, and it's totally off topic for today, or almost off topic, but it relates to the whole issue. How do you shape projects? How do you acquire the tools you need? How do you actually deliver results? And the reality is, I'm sorry?
And adoption.
And adoption, yeah. And then there's also the issue that IT wrestles with called sustainment. Because when the engineer who brought the thing in the door gets promoted, fired, transferred, goes skiing, what happens? The vice president pushes the whole thing over to IT with no budget and expects it to be looked at.
I think, again, back to, just before I carry on, the POC is very important. I think starting small, That's what worked for us. We took one small, like a field, and said, okay, we're going to do this, put some data analytics around this, built some integration with some of the key databases, and then showed it to our engineers, and like, this is great. And then it just sort of exploded where, well, we need that. Well, how come we don't have that? And again, back to that POC, start small, start with what you can do within a budget, and then watch it grow. Because again, if the business is successful, they're going to say, well, we want more of that. And that's kind of what happened with us. So,
Yeah. That key phrase, we want more of that, okay? That's an opportunity to create a more formal, sustainable, maintainable application rather than to upscale your Excel spreadsheet. Because if you did the proof of concept on 20 wells in one zone in one area, and the business says, we want more of that, you can't now do that for 1,000 wells and 57 pools, right? That's a non-starter. And that's sometimes hard to explain and hard for vice presidents to swallow. Okay, moving on to technologies. So even, as you heard me say repeatedly, this should be driven by a business problem, a business opportunity. As IT professionals, we need to be aware of the technologies that enable digital transformation. And here's a list. Okay, so the application, enterprise search, if some of you are thinking about that. I love this because it creates the illusion that you have integrated everything, even though you may have integrated nothing. Okay, so that can be very useful. Do you have a knowledge base? Is that worth doing? Maybe you can take advantage of machine learning, master data management, to make sure you're presenting high confidence data and not challenge and not questionable data. Metadata management, many organizations don't do that very well. It can help. Predictive maintenance is another good application. Now on the technology side, what is it in the computing infrastructure? What are the technologies there that are helping? Cloud computing, I think the cloud has a role in some of this in many organizations. Data analytics, we've talked about that a lot. Graph DBMSs are relatively new in oil and gas, but there are some applications that are quite innovative to think about. IIoT, we've talked about that a number of times. I'm expecting that will roll out more and more in the oil and gas industry, just like it has everywhere else. Some of you are probably already experimenting with RPA. Can be very good. And I've thrown tablets on there. You may say, well, wait a minute, those are not new, and you would be right. But I suggest to you that there are a lot of applications for digital integrations where tablets can really have a big role. Tablets are not just about YouTube or TikTok videos. There are genuine business applications there.
Are you able to expand on the graph database? Do you have this?
Sorry, you're using a graph database?
In the oil and gas industry. Are you able to expand on it?
Talk about it.
Oh, you want me to expand on oil and gas databases?
No, just graph databases was the question.
Sorry, graph databases. I think that in seismic interpretation, maybe in geologic interpretation, and in dealing with IIoT data, particularly in places like SAGD, graph databases can have a significant role. Now, have I seen any of those applications? No. So, I'm kind of being a little bit of futurist. So let me throw it out. Are any of you using graph databases for anything? Okay, the silence means I suggest to you that you think about whether they can help you in some regard. And there's a mountain of information. And again, you can read my short column called A Quick Primer on Graph Databases. So it'll take you 2 minutes. Maybe that's a good place to start. But there's a lot of good information out there on the web. Okay, looking at the future. We have artificial intelligence. I think we're going to see more of that being used to make decisions more autonomously with less human input. Augmented reality, so right. Merging the data in a visualized form with the reality. And you can see that pump or compressor or whatever it is showing up on the tablet as well as the real one behind it there. Merging reality with some future state that you're after. Blockchain, we're going to see more of that, I think, in oil and gas. Digital twins. There's a lot of hardware advances. Like most of our laptops now have SSDs. I think we'll see that used more. There's field programmable gate arrays, graphics processing units, programmable network interface cards, non-volatile memory express. There's a whole bunch of technologies that can really speed up high data volume applications at an affordable cost. Robotics, I think we will see, okay, so there's the digital twins. There's some hardware advances. There's some robots. We're starting to see some of those for surveillance. Surveillance is always the easiest because it doesn't have to change anything. It just is just observing. And then 3D printing, we're going to see more of that in the business of components. Okay, all of this goodness is not without obstacles. Here is a list of obstacles that were the result of a survey. The top is finding support in the executive suite. That's all about how you sell it. Problems accessing data, I think we're all familiar with that. The need for collaboration among multiple disciplines, the risk of project and budget overrun. And that risk to me means you've tackled something you didn't understand as well as you thought you did. Okay, resources, funding, lack of skilled staff, some of these integrations, and using these tools. Everybody and his dog thinks they can use Power BI because they can double click the icon or TIBCO or anything. There's a lot of power and there's a learning curve behind these products. And we shouldn't think, I mean, they're wonderfully ease of use and they represent a genuine breakthrough in software developer productivity, absolutely. But that doesn't mean all of a sudden the learning curve has disappeared. It hasn't. Challenges with technology, it's true. And implementation complexity is really about people change management.
I come from the data quality background. I've been doing it for many years. I think one of the biggest barriers to digital transformation is quality of data. You can't do any of it without good quality data. We don't talk about it enough. Like you could create a beautiful Power BI chart, a big or a spot bar chart, but I guarantee it's probably wrong.
Okay, so Mark, thank you for highlighting that issue. And it's absolutely correct. We've all seen beautiful charts. They're graphically beautiful, but people say that's not accurate, and they're correct. It's not. And that can torpedo your project, because they don't think that the data is the problem. They think the problem is in your software development, okay? That you're not a good coder or a good user of the tool. That's the opening perception, which is wrong, but that is what it is, and you need to counter that. So what I try to do is make sure that we've profiled the data some way, somehow, to get a sense of how much data cleanup we have to do, and then bake a lot of money into the project proposal for data cleanup.
The bigger part of the problem is that people looking at the charts don't know the data's wrong. We're making decisions, big decisions, on bad data. We don't know what's wrong. I always say it's okay to have bad data as long as you know it. People don't know they have it.
So, okay, so again, I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, and I agree with you. My suggestion on that one is, what if we use these fancy data visualization tools not to solve the end user problem, but to actually illustrate the data quality issue? And then management can say, whoa, that's not looking good. And we go, yeah, you're right, boss, that's not looking good. So we need to do something about improving our data stewardship around here and cleaning up the historical data, at least to some extent. And then the charts that you want to see, boss, which will actually be meaningful and reliable, and we can have confidence in them.
And I would argue that's what's happening. You talk about actionable data, that's what visualizations are providing, right? Because you can see it, you can't see it in Excel, not as easily, right? Because you got rows of numbers, you can't see the problem, but the visualization highlights it.
Lessons learned, there's a whole bunch of lessons that we've learned about how to do digital transformation well. And it really means focus on the business opportunity, not the technology. Avoid pilot purgatory is don't just do pilot. Do a pilot and then try to expand that and move towards a production system that actually delivers real benefits. Because by definition, pilots do not deliver benefits, business benefits, they deliver important understanding benefits around the problem you're trying to solve. Okay, so some conclusions. I think we're here today and digital transformation is getting a lot of attention because the benefits are real. This isn't just some fantasy concepts that have been dreamt up by consultants to create more billable hours, okay? So don't think in those terms. So you can deliver real value with modest projects. You don't need to have these giant multi-zillion dollar projects that affect the whole world to get somewhere. In fact, I'm saying don't do that, even if somebody claims they want that, because you can't deliver that. The organization will run out of political support or dollars, or the universe will change, something will get in the way. So don't do those things. And I think every one of your organizations, there are multiple opportunities that you can help the organization and improve the value you're delivering. So my recommendations are start small, find a sponsor. You need a middle management sponsor. Sometimes IT starts these on their own, and that's kind of what Bill Clay talked about. And I'm not against that, but don't do a big project on your own. Okay. And the last one is read the resources. So there's a whole bunch of resources at the PowerPoint at the end of this. You're welcome to read some of those. Oh, and this page lists a series of articles I wrote on the Energy Now website about digital transformation. So you might want to have a look at those. They're just a click away. Where are we? Okay. So you've all contributed a lot to this presentation, and thank you for that. And I hope that we've explored some topics related to digital transformation that you found interesting and informative.
Thanks, Yogi.